when you're in such a small group too, you have to give talks all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, experience.
Yeah. So the Theocratic Ministry School, if somebody doesn't, first of all, you're assigned to give a talk every 2 weeks because you're such a small group. And then if somebody doesn't show up, you have to do impromptu talks. And so doing that in a foreign language really cemented my Spanish very young.
Yeah,
sometimes we look at the past as nothing but a waste, but you know what? That's something actually super great that I took away from religion.
It certainly did. And you live now where?
I'm in Ecuador now.
And do you speak Spanish? Probably all the time, other than maybe your husband talking to him in English. Well, you talk to me in English, of course. And you do well in both languages. Ephraim, Rivera, who has the program before this one, he conducts an interview in Spanish, and you took it over for him because he couldn't do it this evening. But he told me your Spanish, because he is from Puerto Rico and originally, and born and raised in a Spanish environment. And he said your Spanish is better than most people who were born and raised in it. So that's just wonderful. I wish I could say the same for myself. English is, if we can do pretty good in English, we're all happy. So tell the folks, because I already know all of it. But tell the folks where the Spanish group was.
So my family was originally from the Midwest. I was born in Kansas. It sounds like a movie, but I was born in Kansas. My family lived in Colorado. When I was about 10-ish, my country family moved to the Hamptons in Long Island. So outside of, not too far away from Bethel. Actually, that's part of why I switched to the Spanish congregation, because pioneering in English was really, really difficult in the Hamptons. There was nothing but vacation homes. So in the wintertime, we were like 99% vacant homes. And, super difficult territory. And the Spanish was begging for help.
Why were there so many Spanish in the Hamptons?
Because the rich people need landscapers and pool cleaners and house cleaners.
Exactly.
Construction workers. So there's actually a huge Spanish community in the Hamptons. And so
I see. I never dreamed that, and I'm very familiar with that area. I have pictures of myself as a child with my mother and father. And on the weekend, often, we were Catholic, and so after church, we would go out to the Hamptons, to the ocean.
To the beach.
And so there are pictures of my brother and I as youngsters picking up shells and so forth. But we knew that this was a rich man's area.
Very unique area to grow up in. Very unique area.
When I pioneered, I was, one place that I pioneered in was Palm Beach County, and it was I lived in West Palm Beach, and our territory was Palm Beach, and it was like the Hamptons during the summer months. It was desolate, and the stores were.
That's because they were all in the Hamptons, and in the winter when we were desolate, they went to Palm Beach.
That is the truth of the matter. So I knew someone in Bethel who we're going to talk about. And I was mentioning to my husband about this person. And before I got any farther than saying the name, he said, I work with him. And, so he thought he knew it all. This witness fellow was Danny Black. And Danny Black joined the writing department. I was in the writing department for a while when he came in. He was a youngish man. I'm not going to say he was a young man. I don't know. Maybe he was 25 or 30. He looked that way to me. He had a very, very interesting background, and how he came to work with my husband, who was over plumbing in the Bossert Hotel. In fact, I remember Danny complaining to me about where he was put when he was came into Bethel. So some of the names we're going to mention here, there could be many people out there who know these people, who knew these people years ago. Colin Quackenbush was a very excellent writer in the writing department. He was there when my husband was there in the 50s. And then there was a kind of a disagreement with the president, Knorr, and Colin Quackenbush decided to leave Bethel. And he was out for quite a while. I think somewhere in the late 70s, after Knorr died, the writing department really needed gifted writers. And so Colin was asked to come back. Well, at that time, he told me that he was delighted to come back because he was getting older. And he said it was really hard on him working in construction as he was doing, because he really didn't have any other type of occupation to get into, because he wasn't trained. He was a writer, So when he came in, I get to know him, and of course, like I said, my husband and he were in the 50s, and my husband was in the dining room when Knorr scolded Quackenbush and embarrassed him tremendously. And it was over the fact that Colin was over the editorial department, which was called that instead of the writing department. And he was so busy, and Knorr, and he told Knorr he wanted to go. He was single, and he wanted to go to Switzerland skiing. And so Knorr said, I want you to give talks over there. And Colin said, no. He said, this is my vacation, and I don't want to give talks. That was the altercation. That's where he ended up on he said no to Knorr. So anyway.
That's bad. That's a no-no.
So he ended up back in the department, because after Knorr died, and then it was people like Klein, who was a governing body member, wanted Colin back, and they really did needed better writers. So Colin used to go out to the Hamptons. He was invited out to the Hamptons. So by family, specifically by the family by the name of Howell, and they were frequently calling guests. And someone turned my lights off. Put my lights on.
Yes, the Howell family was a very influential reputation and a very financially generous, a very well-connected family. They were in my parents' congregation, and actually, even though I switched to the Spanish congregation when I was 12, my dad was afraid I was going to fall out of the truth because Spanish wasn't my first language. So actually, they made me go to all of the English meetings and all of the Spanish meetings for 2 whole years.
Whoa.
So from 12 to 14, I went to 2 meetings on Sunday, Monday night book study in Spanish, Tuesday night book study in English, Wednesday night meeting in Spanish, Thursday night meeting in English. Geez, I'm confused even saying it, for 2 years.
Amazing.
So a lot of those people, all those heavies in Bethel, they always came out on the weekends because
governing body members were entertained by the Howells.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And the Howell family entertained a lot of them. So there's a lot of those heavies in Bethel. I knew.
Yeah, well, Danny Black, coming into this department, had to spend into the writing department. He had to spend 6 months in demolition in the basement of the Bassett Hotel. It was very hard on him. He was a college graduate. He wasn't raised in the organization.
Mhm.
His grandmother was a witness, but his grandfather was actually their last name Black, and his grandfather was president of the World Bank.
Yeah.
And I met his wife, or Danny's grandmother, in Florida when we lived at West Palm. There was a doctor in Palm Beach who was a witness. And when I was pioneering, Joe was pioneering, I worked part-time for that doctor, and I met Danny's grandmother when she come to Jupiter, Florida, which wasn't far from West Palm or Palm Beach. And she would come to see the doctor. She was getting up in age. And so that's how I knew her. Since I only worked part-time, I wasn't a close friend. But so when Danny was transferred after 6 months, he survived the job. Norm believed in that kind of thing. He put you in something really hard. See if you survived, and then you got a better.
Do the time until you get a promotion.
Yeah. So Danny survived, and that's why Joe said that. He said, "Oh, I knew him. He was working in demolition," and they did that to people because a lot of the Bethelites would have been very angry if someone came right in who was a younger person and went right into a plush job, because that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
So Danny talked to me about his grandmother, and it was very interesting. I'll bring some things out that you might be familiar with later. And Danny's, now you're related in a
By marriage.
By marriage to Danny Black. Danny's wife is, go ahead.
Lisa Howell. And I married her brother. Married her brother. So her brother's name was Tom.
Okay.
And the way that happened was, so my dad had moved us to New York for construction work. He was in construction.
From where?
From Colorado. We went from Colorado to New York.
Okay.
So we were the Western family in the Hamptons. That was super fun. They were the ones that wore the cowboy boots and the cowboy hat and the Western cut suits and the accents.
Yeah, but there wasn't many witnesses out in the Hamptons.
There was one congregation, and then later they divided to 2 congregations. So I started pioneering when I went to pioneer school. Stephen Lett taught my first pioneer school.
Really? How come?
Because I lived close to Bethel, and it was a blessing. That's why.
He wasn't at Bethel then. We tried to figure out, was he a circuit overseer?
It seems like to me he might have been a district overseer. I didn't know him then. He wasn't, his face wasn't on the website because websites hadn't been invented yet.
Of course. And his face was really an interesting one.
He was like that in real life. He ate with those facial expressions. I went out in service with him, and that was.
Tell us about how people reacted to him. I think
that was embarrassing.
We're not making fun.
That was embarrassing because he'd go up to the door, and obviously, I don't know why he uses those facial expressions, but for whatever reason, it alienates people because it's so extreme and it's so bizarre. And he had no interpersonal connection with people at all, no ability to read people, no ability to look at somebody and know whether they were paying attention to him or not, or following him or whatever. So he'd go up to the door and he'd start on like these weird presentations, like talking about Jonah or some bizarre thing. And the household would be there looking at him like, and I'd be like,
sounded to me like he needed some life coaching.
Yeah, I know. Well, people skills. And so, obviously I don't remember even because I was 12, 13, something like that. I don't remember thinking he was of the anointed or anything like that. It wasn't until a long time later that I found that out. And I was like, that guy, the one that taught my pioneer school that was super weird, the one that didn't connect with anybody at all whatsoever. And you know what? I even remember thinking, why would God choose somebody so disconnected from the sheep? Somebody that's
You were
so
thinking that at 12 years old and 11 years
no later, because I don't remember knowing that he was of the anointed then. I don't remember how old I was when he became a member of the governing body. But later, once he was a member of the governing body, going, oh, that guy taught my pioneer school. Why him?
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
Why him?
There must have been a reason for the choice, and it would lie in the power in the hands of
Power of the hands that be. Power of the hands that be. So
not
we've got some
necessarily the
comments
whole.
here asking about marrying a gay guy. So I guess we should get to that part, huh?
Well, we've got 2 hours, and you're going to take every minute of it. And just a minute, we're going to get to the gig.
Hold on, Donnie.
We're going to work our way along here. So your kid, and you're pioneering,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the Howells.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say, this is years later. You're still a very attractive lady, and you must have been
Laughter that does it.
very nice looking young woman,
Thank you.
or youngster. And so Howells were interested in you.
So because my dad was in construction and my uncles were in construction, they would take, the young guys in the congregation, they would apprentice them. They would teach them the trade. So Tom was I think he was about 10 years older than me. I pioneered with his younger sisters, so they were my friends, and he worked with my dad. He's got the reputation, right? He was a ministerial servant. He was also in the Spanish congregation. He had done 3 international branch projects already at the time for construction work.
Oh,
He had done construction in Colombia, Ecuador, and the Dominican Republic.
what years were that?
That was probably the early 90s, I think. That was probably the early 90s. So I also worked with the family business, when I wasn't pioneering and doing everything else. When my dad needed extra help, I did construction too. So one day I was 17, I went to work, and here's Tom. And it's just the 2 of us. And I'm like, this is super weird. This is a little awkward. And he says, I've talked to your dad and your uncles, and I want to marry you. And so I went, oh, okay, well. So my family, I grew up with a very close, loving family. I know there's a lot of abuse in families. I found that out after the fact in the religion, but not my family. I had a great family, very, very strict. They were elders, and I didn't have one dad. I had 3 dads. My uncles were like my fathers too. So as I got older, I knew that dating was going to absolutely be a nightmare because they weren't going to approve of anybody. Nobody's good enough for their daughter and their niece. You know how daddies and uncles are. So I show up at work, and he's like, yeah, I talked to them, and yeah, I want to marry you. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, he's not a bad person. I mean, I'm friends with his sisters. I've known them for 7, 8 years. My dad approves. You have a great resume, because that's how you marry people in the organization, is based off of their titles and their resume, so ministerial servant, pioneer, comes from the right family, strong spiritual family, must work, right? So 5 months later, right after I turned 18, we got married. So, should I keep going? Because here's where it starts
Well, you
getting
didn't.
interesting. That was the normal part of my life.
So why didn't you get to know him well? I mean, 5 months, were you working with him, or you
Well,
know,
you're not allowed to be alone together because you might sin.
you got a good point there.
Yep. So you're never allowed to be alone together.
Can't kiss.
Nope. And I no kissing, no hand holding, and of course, I assume that that's because he's a spiritual person, and we need to be a threefold cord, and we can't do anything that might blemish that, right? I mean, how well does anybody know anybody when they get married in the religion? Because you don't have, you can't be alone with them. You can't, you base it off of their spiritual facade, their spiritual presentation, not off
You
of
know,
who
it
they
wasn't
are.
all that way. When we were dating, that came in a little later, because we were dating. We married in '59, so we dated. We knew each other a year and a half,
Mhm.
and it was we had a lot of freedom. The kids had freedom at parties. And in fact, Nora got furious at some of them because they were kissing and hugging at
Yeah.
parties, you know. But maybe that's why they came down so hard. But they got too involved in private lives, and to the dismay of those who ended up with a bad choice.
Yeah. Well, so, and you know what? Especially from the point of view of a woman in the organization, women are nothing unless you have a husband that's something.
I agree.
So if you want to if you have any sort of spiritual goals, if you want to do international construction work or be a missionary or go to Bethel
Or
or
you go to live around Bethel and Pioneer or
yep,
in
yep,
Brooklyn.
you have to have a husband that has the same goals.
And
So
you meet Bethelites. That's where so
yeah.
many of the girls were living and pioneering. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, and it's not like dating in the world. You on your first date as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, marriage is on the table. This isn't even really like, oh, well, you know what? Let's see how maybe this works. No. They very specifically date to get married.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole different mentality. It's not even really, do we get along or do we like each other? I mean, my opinion, from my perspective, a woman needs to get married. So you pick the best resume that you can. And with God's help, everything's going to be great.
Yes.
And it wasn't.
Uh-huh. Sorry
And
to say that it wasn't. Mm-hmm.
so my brother-in-law was Danny Black. Danny actually gave our wedding talk. He married us. He was a super, super nice guy.
Yes, but remember, for the folks out there, Danny was not raised a witness.
Mhm.
It was as after university, and he married a girl I believe he knew in university, and
Mhm.
so uh, this was a new kind of a new person into the organization,
Mhm.
and he was just basically because of his grandmother and all the Howells. He got a quick introduction into deeper things about the organization.
Well, that's what power and connection can do for you
Right.
because, his wife took his last name, Black, but the truth is he was still connected to a family that was very well connected.
Mm-hmm.
So then
So then what did you do when you first married, as far as occupation?
So I was cleaning houses. He was still doing construction with my dad. And right after we got married, it was downhill from the very beginning. In fact, at the wedding ceremony, Danny says, "Okay, you're now husband and wife." you may kiss the bride. And he starts walking off without me. I'm like, and Danny's like, wait a second, you need to kiss her. And so he comes back and he does this kiss. And I'm like, okay, that was a little awkward.
Wait a minute. Let's go soon and get into the personal stuff. Did you not kiss him before that? Right.
Kiss on the cheek.
Oh my
Studied
goodness.
with me, though. He studied with me at my dad's house. It was a very, very textbook how every Jehovah's Witness should be in the textbook courtship. You know what? I know people have a hard time understanding that, but the mentality is you have to have it clean. You can't cross the lines, or you're not going to have Jehovah's blessing. And I would look at him and I'm like, well, you know what? He's a ministerial servant. He's a pioneer. He's an international servant. His dad's an elder. He comes from this spiritual family. They hosted governing bodies. So, obviously he's got a higher standard than, what most people do. Great. That's good. That's what you want. Right? Or not. So I'm young.
It's almost like God didn't put for those who are out there who believe the Genesis account, it's just like God didn't put them two together and multiply and fill the earth, It's a sin to be interested in someone else
dead and therefore your body members. And so I just thought it was going to be a great spiritual marriage because I was dumb. Well, but you know what? I was also homeschooled.
Yeah.
I was pioneering from a young age. So how am I supposed to know that that's a red flag?
I watch television. Did you watch TV? Are you so busy in the service that you?
No, we didn't have TV. We were too busy. How was I supposed to know that that's a red flag? Yeah. Well, I'm started realizing that there were red flags when it was too late. I was already married. Wedding night, disaster. He spent 2 hours in the shower crying.
It was clean.
Yeah, right. So we didn't.
I need to be reading those comments by people that are making them over on the side.
You know what? And so I'm laughing not because I'm not healed. I'm laughing because what the heck? This is the most bizarre thing. I know it is inexplicable to people on the outside, but you know what? This is a cult.
Yes.
I grew up in a cult with extremely messed up rules that, are supposed to be there for your protection. But the truth is it ends up hiding a whole bunch of stuff that you're too indoctrinated to see. You're too blind to reality to even know is happening. So we didn't go on our honeymoon right away. There was out of town family and stuff like that. So we had delayed the honeymoon like a week. And so the day after I get married, my sister-in-laws decide to take me out to lunch and to tell me some things about the family that now I'm part of the Howell family and that I should probably know. And so they're like, well, we've all been abused. Tom's been abused. Our grandfather has abused us. Our dad has abused us. And so you should know. And I was like, what the hell? Why would you not, this is the day after my wedding night, which was disaster. So I'm like, why would you not tell me this before? And they were like, well, he had a girlfriend before and we told her and she canceled the wedding. She broke it off. And so we really thought he should marry you. So, that's why we didn't tell you.
They all wanted him married.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That because I think standards for men are kind of the same. You should have a spiritual wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then we got special permission from Don Underwood in Bethel to go to Mexico right away because
Don Underwood was the overseer of the worldwide construction work.
Yep. Because I had a good reputation, because he had a good spiritual reputation. We got permission to go to Bethel. I think it was about 4 or 5 months after we were married. I think typically you're supposed to be married for a year and you need to be 20 or something like that before they'll send you on an international project. But they made a special exception, and I was 18 and we'd been married 4 or 5 months, and we went
And
to
he
Mexico.
was a Howell.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yep.
probably Don Underwood spent the vacation out in. Actually,
I know he did. I know he did. Yes.
I really
Yes,
liked it. He's a great man, had 5 kids himself, and raised them up at Wallkill because he was the builder of the first building in Wallkill. Wonderful, fair man. And if he had known, it would.
Well, you know what? He was not one of the effeminate type of men. He was pretty masculine. I mean, he did construction work and stuff like that, but clearly I was not his thing. Yeah.
Tom, you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was not his thing. So so here we are, newly married. I'm 18 and we're in Bethel at Mexico, married just 4 or 5 months. And, he goes camping on the weekend with single brothers. I'm not invited. I'm not allowed to go. So we had the same amount of alone time after we were married as we did when we were dating. I mean,
do you feel that this was, I'm interrupting you because I'm so curious. Do you feel that this was a family arrangement?
Yes.
This marriage, do you feel that they're on both sides, they wanted Howell to be married, Tom to be married. And so it was mutual on the part of the fathers?
Yes, absolutely. But I will defend my dad. He only wanted what was best for me. And in his religious goggles, that's what he thought was going to be the best.
Yeah, well, he didn't suspect. So
and I know too that he was probably concerned that I would end up marrying an illegal immigrant because I was in the Spanish congregation. Somebody that he wouldn't be able to speak with. So he's like, okay, you know what? Here's this young man. I know he works with us, so I approve.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I can understand why.
Yeah, I can't, in my heart, I can't really blame him because I know that in his religious closed-mindedness, that was what he thought was going to be a good idea. And unfortunately it wasn't because in the religion, nobody knows anybody else. You don't know anybody. Mm-hmm. You can't know anybody because everybody has to hide what they really think. Mm-hmm. Everybody has to hide what they really feel because if not, you'll get judged. You'll get accused of being apostate or, your privileges get taken away. So you have to stay super closed lips about who you really are.
Well, that's why those who have left the organization really, when they look back, they realize that most people their lives were a facade. Nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors.
Nobody knows. So we finished our tour of Mexico. We were 6 months in Mexico. So by the time we went back to Long Island, by the time we went back to New York, my family had left. They went back to Colorado. So I had no family now in New York. We didn't have a house because we'd been gone for 6 months. And so I moved in with my in-laws.
Oh.
And that's when I really started feeling more gut punches because my father-in-law, Bill Howell, was a mentally disturbed person. He was messed up. So we lived in one of the bedrooms. He didn't have locks on any door. He didn't allow locks on any door. So my father-in-law would come into the bedroom at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning and get something out of the closet. And, anybody knows him, you'd know his mannerisms. He'd be doing this as he's walking through the room. I mean, he was creepy. He would look in the window at night or during the day. He didn't so there's no locks on the bathrooms. He would come into the bathroom and pee while I was taking a shower. It was the most messed up grossness. And so finally at that point, I was like, all right, you know what? This is messed up. This is wrong. And so I went to talk to one of the elders in the English congregation. And I said, you know,
how did he talk to you?
Who? Oh, he was the most woman-hating, degrading of women of any person I have ever known. He was sitting on the couch this one day with my husband, his son, and I come into the room, and I sat down. I think they had the TV on or something, and my father-in-law says, you know, just go back in the kitchen where you belong. And I go, back in the kitchen where I belong. And then he turns to Tom and he says, that's all women are good for, is the kitchen and sex. And then they start laughing. You know, and here I am thinking, you know, maybe my husband would defend me, or, you know, and no, they're just laughing about how that's all women are good for. And I was like, you know, for being an elder, what a horrible human. I mean, not even a horrible witness. What a horrible human you are. He's terrible. So that all of that prompted me to go talk to the English elders. And so I talked to one of them. I was like, you know, I'm sure that you don't know this. How could you possibly know this? Because we have a clean organization, right? But, you know, there's a lot of abuse in this family, and Bill Howell has abused his children, and their grandfather has abused them. And the elder goes, shh, 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 shh. It's already been handled. It's been taken care of. He donated the land to the Kingdom Hall. It's all, leave it in Jehovah's hands. Drop it. Leave it in Jehovah's hands. And I was like, leave it in Jehovah's hands. We're supposed to be clean. I mean, it was like a gut punch, because like I said, I came from a righteous family, you know. They were strict, but you know, they wanted to do the right thing. And I didn't know that stuff like that was going on in our organization. Yeah, I guess, yeah, it was. It absolutely was. So then at that point, I was like, you know what? I cannot live with my father-in-law anymore. I can't imagine myself living like this anymore. I said, well, because I started to realize why my mother-in-law was like she was. So my mother-in-law, Tom's mother, Bill Howell's wife, Sue Howell, walked around constantly with this expression on her face. Okay. You know, you'd say something to her and she'd be like, oh, okay. This is before like antidepressants and medications were really mainstream. You know, it's not like she was on anything. She was numb. She was dead inside. And at this point, I think we'd been married about 1.5 years or something like that. I was just like, you know what? That's going to happen to me. I'm going to become a zombie. I'm going to die. And my soul is going to die. I'm going to have to do something, or else I'm going to become like her forever. So I told Tom, I said, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go back to Colorado where my family is. So I don't care what you do. You can come, you can stay. I don't care, but I'm not staying here. I'm not living with my father-in-law anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. So he did move to Colorado with me. We moved to Colorado, and then it really started going downhill. I don't know, that maybe in his mind, as long as he was in the world where he had position and power and knew everybody and was popular and could go to any congregation and people knew him and knew everybody in Bethel, that maybe that kind of like duct taped his brain together or something. And when we left the environment and went to Colorado where he was an unknown, he came unglued. Then his mental health and the mental abuse really, really started deteriorating. He became extremely emotionally and verbally abusive. And so, and I did try to go to my family and go, we've got some problems. We've got some serious stuff going on here. And the answer I got was, trust in Jehovah, leave it in Jehovah's hands, be a good wife, pray, and everything will be fine. And you know what? It wasn't fine. It wasn't fine. I got to the point where I couldn't live like that anymore. And then I just kept having the face of my mother-in-law. And I was like, this is why she's like this. This is why she's like this. I can't let that happen to me. So I got disfellowshipped. I think in my mind, well, obviously, you can't get a divorce unless you have scriptural grounds for a divorce. Obviously I could have just divorced him, but brainwashing, religious programming.
Yes.
So I got disfellowshipped. I was 20 and I met a worldly guy and I got disfellowshipped. So I got pregnant. Go figure. That's what happens when you are out in the world and disfellowshipped. And so, like I said, I came
terribly unhappy and looking for some sort of legitimate affection.
Yeah, something normal, right?
Normal,
something normal.
yes.
So, but here I am pregnant, and I'm like, I can't imagine raising my daughter without family, because my family was a good family. I can't imagine raising her without grandparents and great grandparents and aunts and uncles, without the loving family that I had. So now I have to either leave the baby's daddy forever or marry him in order so I can get reinstated, right? So I marry him. I hadn't known him very long. I think we'd known each other maybe 4 or 5 months. But, here I am pregnant and he's like, okay, let's get married. And I'm like, well, okay. Coincidentally, I have to get married in order to get reinstated anyway, or else, cut you off forever. So I get married. Husband number 2, this one's worldly. And he was definitely opposed to the religion. You know what? And I can't even blame him for that either, because when we met, I was disfellowshipped. Now we're married and I'm Jehovah's Witness girl again, going back to meetings, going out in service. No, not going out in service because I wasn't reinstated yet. But, I'm back to a lifestyle that he didn't sign up for.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not okay with that. He was the one that burned literature and threw my clothes out and said, pick your God or me. He was not on board for me being one of Jehovah's Witnesses or raising his kids in the religion either. And so I'll share this part of the story. When I went to get reinstated, I turned in my letter. My dad, we were still no contact, but he did say he was an elder, and 2 of my uncles were elders in the congregation. So my dad says, it's time for you to turn in your letter. So I turn in my letter for reinstatement. And the presiding overseer at the time takes my letter and he goes like this, throws it in the trash can. And I go, what? He goes, ask your dad. With that face, he just goes, ask your dad. So I'm disfellowshipped. I'm not really supposed to have that kind of conversation with my dad, but I go to my dad and I go, what's happening? And so my dad very briefly, because I'm disfellowshipped, it says, he really shouldn't be the presiding overseer. He doesn't qualify. We think that he should step down. So just leave it in Jehovah's hands. Wait until the circuit overseer comes and we'll see what happens. So circuit overseer comes, nothing happens. And so I turn in another letter to another brother, a different brother in the committee. And then no response. I get no response whatsoever to the second letter. Then my dad and my uncles step down from being elders. And the presiding overseer calls me and says, okay, you're reinstated now. And I go, what? Yep, you're reinstated. We're going to announce it. So, I'm glad to be reinstated, but what the heck is going on? What's happening? So I'm reinstated. And basically what happened was, because my dad and my uncles were righteous people, they were trying to keep the congregation clean and have somebody step down that didn't qualify. He didn't like that and used me as a pawn to get rid of the annoying elders.
That elder? He wanted to get rid of your father, and
Yeah, because they were telling him he should step down. Didn't want to step down. So guess what? You want your daughter and your niece reinstated? Get
so
out.
you walked right
Reinstated.
into another situation.
So I'm laughing, not because it's funny, but because it's ridiculous.
The
It's
irony.
it's a circus. I mean, what are you supposed to do? You can laugh or you can cry. I mean, and so again, I'm like, what the heck? I mean, what's going on here? And the answer that you always get in the religion is there's imperfection in the religion. There's imperfection, imperfect people. It's still the true religion. It's still the true religion.
That's yeah.
Still the right religion. It's just, you just have to overlook the imperfections like Jehovah's.
Well, that's the answer they're trained to give, and they call that love.
That's the answer we're brainwashed. That's the answer that we're brainwashed to give ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So the second marriage lasted almost 5 years, and then he left. He left me with 3 little kids. So the kids at that time, I think, were about 3, 2, and 1. All right, that's just great. So now here I am, a woman in the organization. I'm divorced twice now with 3 little kids. I've been disfellowshipped once. So you know what? I am on nobody's resume ever.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to touch me with a 10-foot pole because, I've, made some mistakes, God forbid. So there was an ex-retired circuit overseer in my congregation who introduces me to his son. 20 years older than me, not afraid of my mistakes and willing to take on 3 small children. So at 28, I got married the 3rd time. Husband number 3, guys. We need a flow chart here, I know. So he's 20 years older than me. I think at that time I was about 28. The kids were 5, 4, and 3, something like that. They were super, super little. And now they have a stepdad. So from there, we went from Colorado to Utah. The only good thing that comes out of this segment of the story is that he was the life coach. Funny enough, right?
Oh.
He is the life coach, and he had the life coaching business. And so he encouraged me to get certified so that I could help with the business. And that actually opened up the world of psychology to me. I had never really gotten into any other studies, any other books other than Watchtower books. So, that was like my brain just went, this is awesome. The power of the human mind, what we're capable of. And the NLP was just this fantastic tool that with my clients, I was just like, oh my God, this is mind blowing how effective it is. And we're in Utah. So most of my clients are Mormon. Ex-Mormons, most of them specifically. And so they would come to me for help because they, Mormons don't believe the same things as Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's a cult too. Mormons excommunicate. Mormons are highly controlling about dating, about what they wear, about what they eat. They do missionary assignments and stuff too. So when a Mormon leaves their cult, they have to go through a lot of the same reprogramming that Jehovah's Witnesses do because the culture is very same. So I had a program.
The control is the same.
Yeah, exactly. So I had these steps that I followed to help the Mormons integrate into the world. They also kind of consider it the world. So, there's things that we have to figure out, our identity, our clan, our beliefs, what do we think about the world? What do we think about money? And, all of these emotions, these other things, not doctrinally, but all of these other things that are important in life. And that's what I coached them on.
So your husband was actually instructing you in this philosophy?
He's the one that introduced me to it, and then I got my certification. In the same
class. You went to classes or something?
Yeah, and I got certified in the same thing that he was certified in. We have a comment. Yes, there is a number 4, and he's the last and final. I quit after this one. Anyway. So the one good thing that came out of this is I got a tool that has absolutely been my blessing for the whole rest of the life. So
Mhm.
from there, we eventually went to the Dominican Republic to
Oh,
serve where the need is great. We took
so
the
was he? Now he's the son of a circuit overseer.
son of a circuit overseer. He
Okay,
served the circuit
was he also a elder or a
regular
minister?
pioneer and elder.
Really? While he was, that was his income from the coaching, and he
You know, the
pioneered.
coaching was supposed to be sales coaching. He was a real estate broker, and so he started coaching the real estate agents on sales.
Okay.
Sales goals, how much money do you want to make? How many people does that mean you need to talk to, etc. So when somebody doesn't make their financial goal, their job goals, it's almost always because they have a life problem. They're going through a divorce or they've got some other sort of trauma which gets in the way of their financial success. So, business coaching, like by session 2, was life coaching of, why is my life so messed up? So that's how that kind of morphed into that.
So you're in the Dominican Republic,
Yep.
and
Hold
how
on
long did you stay there?
just 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're in the Dominican Republic, and
And you have your 3 children?
we had the 3 kids. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, they were 10. I think they were 10, 8, and 9, something like that when we went to the Dominican Republic. And that had always been a dream of mine. I loved pioneering. I loved service. I loved people. And it was an experience that I wanted the kids to have, to be able to live outside of the country, to become fully fluent in another language. So, we really felt like that would be a great thing for the family. And there was lots of good things there. The bad thing is that husband number 3 was a very, very, very heavy drinker. Then when we were in the Dominican Republic, he took a fall.
So he's got psychological problems or other type of problems also, and yet comes out of a home where they personify the teachings of the Watchtower. They love God, they say, and have a child that is got issues too. Now.
Yep. Yeah. So prescription pain medications became his thing in the Dominican Republic. They're a lot easier to get a hold of, especially if you're a foreigner. Getting prescriptions is no big deal. So between the alcohol and prescription painkillers, an already tricky situation got a bajillion times worse. So he's an elder, he's a regular pioneer, I'm regular pioneering, and I have a black eye. I have bruises. And so at one point the elders came to me and they were like, what? Come on, you can't come to the meeting with bruises and not say anything. There's only so many times you can say, you fell and, hit your eye. So I had to go, I went to the brothers and I said what was happening. And, he was already known to be publicly intoxicated. So that was, they already knew that. And then you add the domestic violence into it. And so he got publicly reproved, deleted as an elder and deleted as a pioneer. And of course, blamed me because, I ratted him out. So within 2 days, he had cleared out all the bank accounts and left me and the 3 kids in the Dominican Republic with no money. And he went back to the States. So he went back to the home congregation in Colorado. I wanted to stay in the Dominican Republic. I felt like it was a good environment for the kids. The kids were happy there. Financially, though, it was a disaster. I mean, he took the job, he took the clients, he took everything. So, figuring out how to support me and 3 kids, I needed to figure out how to start all over again. So I ended up going to California at first, where I had some friends. I start, getting my life, getting a job. I got a car. After a couple months, I'm starting to get myself back on my feet. Okay, so here's a side note. I had been married to husband number 3 about 9 years. So he'd been the stepdad for 9 years. In those 9 years, the kids' biological father did not pay child support. He'd only seen them maybe twice. And that was their situation with their biological father. So here I am in California, and their biological father calls and he says, I want to see the kids. Technically, legally, he had 8 weeks of visitation, so I couldn't really say no because he had legal visitation. And then on the other hand, too, I'm like, okay, well, at least maybe he's trying to be a dad. Maybe he's grown up, it's good for children to know their biological father. So he takes the kids and he keeps them. And he calls me and he says, you'll never see these kids again. He cut off all communication. He shut down my daughter's Facebook. He would not allow me to speak to them. So, of course, the first thing I do is I go to an attorney and he's like, well, can't do anything until he's had them for over 8 weeks, because legally he can keep them for 8 weeks and there's nothing you can do about it. He was only supposed to have them 1 week. And there's legally absolutely nothing I could do until he had breached his visitation. So in the meantime, I'm frantic. So I'm working and, trying to keep myself busy, and not speaking to my kids was incredibly, incredibly difficult. And this was also a jurisdictional nightmare, because I talked to, like I said, I talked to an attorney. I talked to several attorneys. First of all, they were like, well, technically you're not a legal resident of California because you haven't been here long enough. When he picked them up from Reno, Nevada, because that was the closest airport. So technically we can't even say that they were kidnapped from California. It was Nevada. The custody orders are out of Colorado and he's in Florida. So I literally have a cross-country custody battle, jurisdictional nightmare. And, now I'm going through a divorce because husband number 3 filed for divorce, even though he doesn't have scriptural grounds for divorce. I'm still a faithful sister. He's the one that took off and left. I am still completely 100% dedicated to religion. The crimes that I see, I believe, are due to imperfection in humankind. At this point, I am not thinking at all that it's a false religion. I'm thinking Jehovah's going to step in and I'm going to get my kids back. He's going to help me. That the society helps with custody battles where religion is an issue. And that's exactly why I'm going through this custody battle, is because religion is 100% an issue. So, I'm still thinking everything's going to work out. Honestly, I didn't even really think that maybe I would even need an attorney, because I'm the biological mother. This guy hasn't paid child support in 10 years. He owes me hundreds of thousands of dollars of child support. How could I ever possibly lose custody? Well, parental alienation is a real thing, and he is in the world. So when he took the kids, he gave them Christmas, he gave them birthdays, and in retrospect, I'm happy for that. I'm happy that they are out of the religion. I'm happy that they are raised in a cult, because I don't know if I ever would have left the religion if I'd have still had my kids. I might be willing to risk my own everlasting life, but I don't know that I would have risked my children's everlasting life.
And they would be witnesses. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Or disfellowshipped, to going through the same kind of trauma that everybody else goes through. So in a nutshell, in that year, I ended up having to do 7 cross-country trips from Florida to Colorado for custody hearings, for divorce hearings from the third husband. And so this is how I start being pushed out of the religion. I'm a faithful witness, right? I'm not doubting the religion. I fully believe that Jehovah's got my back, that this is the true religion. And I go to Colorado for the first court hearing, and I go to my home Spanish congregation. The soon to be ex was in the English congregation. I go to the Spanish congregation where everybody had known me at this point like 20 years. And I'm like, hi, everybody. Hi, hi, hi. And I get this. I raise my hand to answer, hey, me, pick me, pick me, pick me. Nobody calls on me. Finally, I'm like, what the heck? What the heck is going on here? What's going on? Well, the third husband had been there about this time, probably 5 to 6 months beforehand. His father had his letter. You know how there's a letter that follows you that says, what you did and stuff. Apparently his father, because he was an ex-circuit overseer, had his letter sent to another congregation and then sent it to another congregation. And so by the time it got to our home congregation, nobody knew that he had been publicly reproved and deleted as an elder. And he told everybody that he left me because I was an apostate. Now, apostate is one of those words that it is super easy to sling around, because once that word gets out there, they don't need any proof. It is like automatic shunning. You don't have to prove anything. You can't defend yourself, because I tried. And I went to the Spanish body of elders, and I was like, you know me. Ask my congregation in the Dominican Republic. Well, your spiritual head is here. Come on, man. Come on. What? And they're like, well, you're just going to have to leave it in Jehovah's hands. And if you're not an apostate, time will tell. So I just get treated like an apostate in the meantime? I mean, come on, man. Please, I'm trying to stay in the religion,
The system was against you.
It was completely against me. And, so I was in Florida, going back and forth to Colorado for the court hearings. And it was in Florida, my publisher record card hadn't gotten to Florida yet. I think it was still in California. And so they didn't have my records yet. And an elder there, they were doing unassigned territory. And he's like, come on, sweetheart, just do unassigned territory with us. So I go and I do 2 weeks of unassigned territory in South Carolina, North Carolina, something like that. And you know what? It felt good. I loved people. I loved talking to people about the Bible. And so when I get back, the elders from this new congregation who didn't have my publisher record cards yet, they're knocking on the door and they're like, you know what? Your husband has called us and you're an apostate and you just did unassigned territory without permission. And I'm like, no, nobody understands. That's not true. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter. The reputation was out there. The head of the house said so, and that was a done deal. So by the time the official custody came through, that the kids' dad got full custody and I was cut out completely. So now I've lost my kids. I've lost my family. Interestingly enough, with all of this, she's an apostate, nobody called me to say, hey, you know what, sweetheart? We know you. How come what's going on? Are you having spiritual doubts? How can we spiritually help you? Nope. I got shunned hardcore for being an apostate and I wasn't. All right, fine. So finally, you know what? I just decided, I shouldn't have to fight this hard. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe it's me. You know what? Maybe God never forgave me for divorcing the first gay husband. Maybe I've never been forgiven maybe I'm too rebellious. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe that's why all of this is happening to me. And I thought, you know what? If Jehovah wants me out, then I'm going to humbly take it. And I'm okay. That's what you want. That's when I started my lifestyle deprogramming, because I still didn't think that it was the wrong religion. I just thought I'm wrong. So I start my lifestyle deprogramming, which is basically the exact same thing that I had used on the Mormons. How to create a world outside, how to create a new family, how to create new friends, how to create a new future for yourself.
How to deal with reality.
How to deal with reality, how to blend, how to create a life outside of a cult, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And And I did. I created a new world for myself. And then I met my fourth husband. This one is a husband by choice. In fact, I didn't even marry him right away. It took me 8 years to marry this guy. I learned my lesson the first time. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses courtships were out of necessity and extremely brief. And, I'm not doing that again. So anyway, I met a wonderful man, and we did real estate, and I went back to life coaching, and then we decided that we wanted to retire outside of the United States. And so we are now here in Ecuador. We bought 40 acres on the Amazon, and we have a farm, we have a healing retreat. And so this is where my story ends up. But let me back up for a second, because I did not wake up from the religion when I got kicked out. It actually took a couple of years in order for that to happen. So my brother, he's listening. My brother got scholarship. My brother was scholarshiped. And so we were able to reconnect. And he's the one that suggested that I read Crisis of Conscience. And so I think he sent me the PDF. I might have downloaded it. I'm pretty sure he sent it to me.
What's your brother's first name?
Zach.
Okay.
Are you still there?
Is he listening tonight?
Yeah, he commented earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the PDF, and I didn't quite read it yet, because that's truly apostate, and I might be labeled an apostate, but I didn't want to go against the organization or anything, right? So by the time I finally read Crisis of Conscience, it was like, shh. Okay, my brother says he disassociated, not disfellowshipped. But either way, we reconnected, so that's what was important to me. So by the time I read Crisis of Conscience, I was like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness, oh boy. So then I started digging into doctrinal things. And then I started putting all of the pieces together, and it was like, oh my goodness. I grew up in a cult.
Well, the writer of that
Oh
book.
my goodness, I grew up in a cult. What the heck?
Well, the writer of that book, he was a victim too.
Yeah.
See, who thought he was extremely knowledgeable about the Bible, thought that he was important to the religion.
Yeah.
And all of that is just fallacy. And the reality is what you went through 3 times over. Most people, one time.
I was a fighter. I was determined to hang in there and do things right.
Well, yeah, for sanity reasons, different strokes for different folks, how they deal with this. If they don't deal with it, the results are tragic. And we all know what we're hearing about the suicide. So
yeah.
What happened to you is not horrible. It's life. And outside of this organization, where there isn't religious domination, people try to find happiness different ways.
Yeah.
And they're not looked down upon. And everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
And in your case, you're a victim of really of abuse, because the Watchtower policies and practices are abusive when you really think about it. They're a violation of human rights.
Well, and I know to an outsider who would listen to the story, why the heck did I get married 3 times? Because I was in a cult. That's why.
Because you were a lost soul, I would think, and looking for.
I mean, that's you're supposed to get married. Yes. If it's a clean relationship, you don't have sex, you don't have relations, anything like that beforehand. How was I supposed to know, right? So, I get disfellowshipped, I get pregnant, and what are my choices? marry the kid's dad or leave him forever. Well, he's a kid's dad. And you know what? Realistically, I'm looking at it going, I'm 21. What's the chances I'm going to be celibate for the rest of my life? I guess I better get married to the kid's dad.
Yes, but you're 21 and with no experience. You didn't even have school, public
Exactly.
school or religious school to get experience. You had controlling information, looking into things with a critical evaluation. You don't know how to make decisions.
Exactly.
We raised our own son, making all the decisions for him. So this is so unnormal, but it repeats itself over and over again in extreme religions.
Yep. Yep.
So
you make decisions based off of your box of reality.
Exactly.
So it's easy to look on the outside and go, oh, you know what? Well, you could have done this or you should have done this. Not when you're in this box. Your choices are really limited when you're living in a frame like this,
Since I was not raised a witness and not subjected to that type of thing by my parents, had a lot of freedom. And so when I had to make decisions, I was making them from past experience and what I was by my parents' experience and what was the world, looking at the world and making decisions based on what I saw and what was good for me. We as parents remove that from our kids when we are in a cult.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's the disastrous part of all of this.
That's the disastrous part. I mean, well, and then in those years too, the internet was not anywhere near as accessible as it is now. So how are you supposed to do any outside research? Go to the library? I mean, there wasn't tons, back in the 90s, early 2000, I never thought to look up Jehovah's Witnesses and investigate whether this is the true religion or not. I mean, I came from generations and generations of faithful Jehovah's Witnesses. Of course it's the truth. It's my spiritual heritage. Of course it's the truth. If it wasn't, don't you think the previous generations would have known? You have confidence that, dang, I'm lucky. I was born into the right religion, and from the outside that looks, insane. Like what a great coincidence that of the millions of religions, you were born in the right one. I mean, we joke about that now, but you really think that when you're in. You really think that and feel that when you're in the religion. So you don't question anything. You just make the best decision out of a bunch of really bad choices. You make the best choice out of a bunch of bad choices. That's it. And then you try to navigate through the crap that follows the bad choices,
Yeah. Well, if Jehovah's Witnesses are so different from everyone else, the Brotherhood is special. Why is the divorce rate and has been for years the same as this is on the outside of the religion? People are people, and these laws and watching people and making rules and regulations to control them doesn't make for better people. So as a person who's gone through all this, you are useful because you had the experiences. Nobody needs those or wants them, but you use them now to help others. And if that isn't a making you happy, I don't know what.
Well, you know what? Something good should come of it. If you're going to go through shit, you might as well have a bunch of fertilizer to show for it afterwards, right?
Yeah. Yes. That's an expression to remember, I think. Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's not fun. And you can do two things with trauma. You can laugh or you can cry. You can stay stuck in the trauma or you can go forward. And it's really your choice. You cannot change what happened. You can only change your perspective, and what will you do from today forward? So, you know what?
And,
I laugh a lot.
yes.
It's not because it's funny or I'm heartless. I'm laughing because laughing is healthy for the human brain. Laughing activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It releases endorphins. It releases serotonin. It contradicts the flight or flight response, which is what the brain gets locked into when you're going through trauma. Flight or fight response actually it shuts down your thinking ability. It diverts the blood flow to muscles, stops the digestion, so that you can instantly respond, flood you with cortisol, flood you with adrenaline. You cannot think as well. And laughter breaks you out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually a psychological reason why I chose to use laughter. Not because I'm heartless and don't care and it's funny. No, because this is a very therapeutic tool for looking at our trauma and moving past it.
I got to say this. It's trauma when you're a witness, but it isn't a big deal to even be married 4 times. People are married more than that. It's how
you don't get married and they're with more people than that.
Yeah. But I mean, everything is in these extreme religious ideas, it's always negative. When you do something, it's considered a mistake if it is different than someone else, or it's a sin. What right does someone else have to say? I've only been married once, but what right has someone else to say that being married twice or 3 times is your fault? Or as if it was such a horrible thing, but that's the programming of the world that we were in when religion had the control. Yeah. So, they burn you at the stake for reading the wrong thing or saying the wrong. We should be far from all of that now. And you can use your experience with others to get them, which you are. And I'm not saying anything you don't know. I'm saying to the audience, my own experience of talking to just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of witnesses over the years. The attitude that people have who leave the organization and they can't live up to what they're told that Jehovah demands is to blame themselves as if they've done something horrible.
Right.
Done anything horrible just because you don't agree with Jehovah's Witnesses, or that you want to do something other than what Jehovah's Witnesses want.
Yeah.
So that's the point of all of this. We talk. Why am I talking to you? It's because we all need to redefine what is illegal or bad or sin and harm. We know what harm is. If we don't harm everybody else, and just because you cannot live with someone that you took an oath to, or whatever you want to call it, and you don't get along, why should you sacrifice yourself to be with that individual forever?
Exactly. So had I been in the world and I met husband number 1, the first night, I never would have married him. I would have ran.
Exactly right.
I would have ran.
Yeah.
Never would have married him.
Just like the woman he was going with before that.
Exactly. The religion sets up these parameters where, you make permanent choices with very limited information. If you had all the information, you would have made a different choice. You know what? Even the kids' dad, we hadn't known each other but 5-6 months, maybe. That is not long enough to make a lifetime marriage commitment to somebody.
Right.
The pregnancy was not a planned pregnancy, because I didn't want to have children in this system, but it happens. And so you deal with it. Should I have married him? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I needed to get reinstated.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So you know what? I made a choice based off of this box that I was in.
That's
right. Should I have married the 3rd husband? Hell no. Absolutely not. But I'm a single mom with 3 kids, and there's a spiritual man. He's
That's
got his
right.
resume. He's got his resume.
Who is vouched for?
Who's vouched for, so I'm still believing, and I'm not doubting the religion. I'm not doubting God. So I'm still thinking, okay, you know what? I'm doing things Jehovah's way. It has to work out, right? Well, I know differently now, but I didn't then. I made the best choices out of crappy choices that I had at the time.
That's right.
So
Well,
if
how
I
did
can
you
laugh
know?
at it, and if my trauma can help somebody else, then great. Then we just turned the shit of the past into fertilizer that can help somebody else grow out of it. Because I know a lot of people who also have horrible stories, and you know what? They're depressed. They're suicidal. Maybe they did commit suicide. No, guys, we don't have to let the trauma does not define us. Trauma is an event. It is
And
not who you are.
it doesn't have to be trauma either.
Yeah,
If you look
exactly.
at it correctly,
Mhm,
and as some people do, and
mhm.
realize, hey, I don't have to take this. I have
Right.
rights, but you don't have a rights. As you mentioned when we began this discussion,
Mhm.
you're a woman in an organization where there are no rights. When
Yeah.
I told you that there was a statement made, you were surprised, and it
Yeah.
was in the article on respect for women.
Yeah.
And the statement that was made, I found it in another issue of the Watch Hour, buried in there. And it took a governing body member to approve to put it in that article, because it said that, well, first of all, I'm going to give a bit of an experience that you relate to because you knew the man, and that was Eric Beveridge, who
Mhm.
was a senior writer, Englishman in his 60s in the writing department when I was there. And so he knew the Howells. He and his wife had been out there many times. He was jokingly called it a pit bull if you in the writing department. And if you wanted
Yeah.
something done or you want some article written that would be really sucked to it, it was Eric. The Awake editor would sign Eric to it, or one of the governing body members would do that. So I came back from a trip and with my husband to a convention and learned about an experience that was a doozy. And the woman told me the experience because she was so upset over it. She brought the witness stuff to a young woman who was previously raised around it, but had left it along a previous years somewhere along the line. And she began pioneering after she was baptized, and she was supporting herself by cleaning witnesses' homes, and she was cleaning the house of one of the witness men. And he came home in an afternoon. I told this experience a long time ago on here, but it bears repeating. And so he came home in the afternoon, and he raped her. And she was so shocked because she was living in a outer world about Jehovah's Witnesses. They were so special, and she didn't have any recall of this until she got pregnant. And then the elders, of course, had to get involved. And what came about this was in time, she was helped, and she remembered what happened that afternoon. Well, the man who raped her, he admitted that he kept saying it was consensual. It was consensual. She said it wasn't consensual. He kept saying that. Well, he won because they accepted what he said, and they disfellowshipped her for lying because she wouldn't admit that they thought she should say it was consensual.
Yeah.
So I came back with that experience, and I told the Awake editor, and Eric Beveridge was there. He went. The Awake editor said to me and to him, "We're going to do an article in the Awake on women." So he sent Eric the article, and he knew the parameters of the what the article was going to be about and what we were headed for. So he took his recorder, he went out and talked to women at Bethel, and he came back in a state of shock, played the recording, and so he was absolutely dumbfounded. He was happily married for 40 or 50 years. He was an older man. He was very earthy and thought he knew everything. And when this women at Bethel, many of the young women were saying how they were mistreated by the men at Bethel, the young men at Bethel, disrespectful, telling them what to do, bossing them around. So the statement that went in that Awake article simply said that no man is ahead of any woman. Remember that, because they all thought that they were heads just because they were male. They were heads of
every woman.
Yeah, every woman in the witness were. Okay. So, but the statement didn't finish there. It said that if she's only in subjection to her husband in a spiritual matters. So that leaves the rest of the life,
right,
for the woman to make decisions. And she's part of this marriage. She makes decisions, financial decisions, all sorts of decisions, and, with the input of both people. But how quickly they forgot, how quickly they go back to this.
None of my husbands ever read that article.
94.
No, I wasn't even aware of that sentence. I mean,
that's right.
The third husband, he called himself the priest of the family. And his pet peeve, I guess, or his thing was submission. I mean, I couldn't go grocery shopping without permission to buy a can of tomatoes. I mean, it was his dominance was oppressive. So when I went through my lifestyle deprogramming, it's funny which hangups we don't realize that we have after the fact, because, now I'm an apostate, I'm out, and I have this wonderful partner. And I would say, oh, you know what, is this shirt too low? Or, is this skirt too tight? Does this look okay? Finally, one day he looks at me, he goes, what is wrong with you? He goes, you're a grown woman, wear whatever you want. I don't care. Why are you asking me? And I was like,
yeah.
Because I was
you had no idea that,
and then we'd need to make decisions, and he, whatever decision, and pay a bill or, whatever. And I'd go, oh, well, I'll do whatever you want, sweetie. I'll support whatever decision you make. And finally, one day he goes, what is wrong with you? Why do you say that? He goes, you're the smartest woman I know. You're my partner. I don't want a pet. I need a partner. Yes. Make the decision. And I was like, oh, because I was in a cult.
Yes, out of all of what you have said this evening, that is something to be remembered.
Those are some of the things that need to be deprogrammed from our lifestyle, because, we don't believe in 1914 anymore. We don't believe in the governing body. But you know what? There are viruses. There are thought viruses in there that poison our everyday life, Things like, is this okay? Does my husband approve of this? Now, obviously, I'm sure there are worldly men out there that, also have control issues. I mean, they're still human. Yeah, they're still human.
Oh,
so,
remember,
but that wasn't a relationship issue. That was cult brainwashing issues on my part. I wasn't behaving like that because my partner expected that. I was behaving like that because that's how I was trained to behave in a cult.
Yes. That sounds harsh.
Well, it's
to,
is it
to the
true?
ears of others
True.
say, yes, it's true. Some of Jehovah's Witnesses and ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't like that. I know
Yeah,
former
I know.
Jehovah's Witnesses that were of important positions at one time in this organization that refused to acknowledge that this organization is a cult.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe that is still a reaction of in your wonderful family, the men in your wonderful family still have that kind of hang up. Only you know, only they know.
Well, so in my line of work, NLP treats the brain like it analyzes how people go about doing things so that you can model it. So if this person does something well, how did their brain do it so we can teach another brain to do it? So there's a very specific way that the brain goes about changing a belief. So first of all, the brain's job is to protect your beliefs. So if you believe this is the truth, the brain literally puts blinders on and only searches for things that coincide with
That's
that
right.
belief.
Mhm.
It blocks out anything that doesn't match what you already believe. And the brain cannot change a belief unless it enters into the emotion of questioning or doubt or wonder first. So anybody who's woken up, you'll remember there was a part of you that was like, oh, really? Is this the truth? Is there something wrong here? What's going on? See, the brain enters into this emotional state of questioning, and that allows the brain to start collecting new information. So then you go from this is my belief, I believe this is the truth, to really? Is it? I don't know. And you collect new information. Then the brain can take this new information and form a new conclusion. But that's why you cannot talk to people who are in the cult, because they are not in that emotional state of wondering and accepting, questioning so that they can collect new data to form a new belief. So you can show them, the Australian Royal Commission, you can show them everything in the world, and they literally have the blinders on. They literally cannot see the proof in front of their
Exactly. And
face.
they don't think it's a cult. To them,
Mhm.
that behavior is expected of them, fits them. They like that way of life. That's also
Mhm.
another aspect here. So we don't even know why we do what we do or pick,
Mhm.
abuse is generational, like
Yeah.
in one of the families you were talking about. And so
Mhm.
the grandfather is an abuser. We hear out all the time. I do in this organization,
Yeah.
and then the son is an abuser. We're talking about physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, whatever. But
Yeah.
it's
It's generational usually.
learned behavior. That
Mhm.
book that I saw in Canada, I read years ago when I was at Bethel, A Dirty Little Secrets, and it talked about sex abuse because the in many families, the fathers are abusing their boys, and their boys grow up to abuse their boys and girls.
They
And
see it
it's
as normal.
generational. That's the hidden secret in all of this stuff.
Mhm.
How do you think normally when it's all you ever known, and you think that's normal? So
Exactly.
this is so much to this. So, yes, you had a long experience here to discuss with everyone. We hope that they learn from it as you learned from it. That's the whole objective here, so that they can have a happier life. It's a short life. I say it every time I'm on here. Make something out of it to make yourself happy.
Well,
Fit.
if there's any moral of the story, it's that, what, this does not have to be the end of the world. This is not the end of your life. This is the beginning. Healing is 100% possible. You can leave the trauma behind. It doesn't have to haunt you every day, no matter how hard it was. You don't have to live with it.
No.
You can live, you can thrive, you can have a great life.
It's just a matter of thinking it through, not being
Mhm.
afraid. Take the first step, keep walking, walk
Mhm.
around the corner of life, and
Yeah.
there's an adventure waiting. It's I
Yeah.
say it all the time because it works. So we've got minutes, 20 minutes or so, and we're going to. Rick told us that we.
There's a Bobby in the chat who's wondering if he can come on.
Absolutely.
I don't
Rick,
know how.
yes, Rick, when we need you, Rick.
There's a man behind the curtain. Rick, we need you.
He's
Well, what yeah, what I can say is Bobby's been waiting in there, but we didn't want to have everyone come in until we kind of open up the lines. So when you guys want to open up the lines, we can do that.
yes, because yeah, we got to hear other people and what they have to say so we can learn from them.
Well, yeah, no doubt. We have a lot of people listening in tonight, Barbara and Deanna. And boy, I have to tell you, Deanna, you're quite the woman. I tell you, you've been through an awful lot. And I have to tell
An
you,
HBO miniseries.
I have been sitting here. Now, I've been doing this program for going on 20 years. It'll be 20 years in January. And I've had very similar stories to yours. The women are totally abused in this organization. I seen it even in my own family. I had 3 sisters, and I had four daughters, and all of them were never treated with any respect. I mean, seriously, the man is the ruling king in the organization. And the poor women get stepped on over and over again. I'm really surprised, Barbara. I'm surprised, Barbara. That's so fine. Look at her. She doesn't have a bone to pick with the Jehovah's Witnesses, right, Barbara?
You know what? I didn't get put down and pushed down. I got asked for advice because of my past experience in the world. Was asked by men who were in prominent positions on business decisions because they never had any business decisions before they came to Bethel and didn't know what the heck they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it just happened to be the way it was. And I'm also a very strong-willed Pollock.
Well, I'll tell you, you are a strong woman, Barbara.
And they did not mistreat me, and neither did my husband. I was treated respectfully. Many of the men that I dealt with were good men. They weren't like the dream world that so many Jehovah's Witnesses are in and weren't facing reality. Not that we didn't have some idiots at Bethel, but there's just all sorts of circumstances. And when you're in the world, as you all know, you deal with it. You meet it, and you make something good out of something bad. But you're not allowed to in this organization. And because of the way that they have dealt with it in the literature, the way they word stuff in the literature, they're paying the penalty for it now. The entire organization is on its way out because it doesn't fit anywhere in any culture any longer, except even the extreme right in the United States religiously, who are causing lots of talk. Jehovah's Witnesses don't even fit in them.
Well, I had to tell you, Barbara, we always say here, the monkey died, the circus is over.
It is over.
It's over. It's done. Stick a fork in them. Take them off the grill. They have nowhere to go. How can you possibly escape all of the negative news that's coming across the internet? You can't. Hey, let's open up the lines. Why don't we see the telephone number here? If you'd like to say hello to Deanna, did you hear her story? My goodness, I'm sure you have a lot of questions. She's on here with us. So why don't you do this? Go ahead, dial in. You're on the telephone line. Say hello to Deanna. Say hello to Barbara. Okay, where Deanna?
Hello, Barbara.
Hi there.
Yeah, this is Laura calling from the state of New Jersey. You can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
I wanted to, of course, I'm a former JW, and I'm a former member of the Bethel family, that is the real Bethel in Brooklyn, New York. I want to thank you so much for you being there and for the good information you have. While I was listening to you, several 3-4 names came to mind, and I wonder if you would indulge me to tell me whatever happened to these famous Bethelites. Number one, if you don't mind answering, I appreciate it. Number one, whatever happened to Reinhard Lingtat?
He lives, he's still alive. He lives out in Washington State, and he's retired. He's not an active witness, but he's not an apostate that I know of.
Oh, he's not an active witness anymore. Okay.
Whatever
happened to the famous and important Dean Songer?
Okay.
Dean Songer.
I would assume Dean Songer is deceased. Of course, as you must know, the beginning of Dean Songer was with NASA, and he came into Bethel, I believe, in the late 50s. And with a background like that, they really grabbed him. He was a very nice man, except that he wasn't very sociable. I didn't even know that he was in the writing department for years. Never saw him. I saw him only once, and I found out that he had a rather high position, made decisions between the Bethel writing department and the factory. He was a very, very powerful man in writing.
Yeah,
I found out later.
The society relied on him tremendously. He was a big, smart engineer for the society there at Bethel. But so you're saying he's still alive? And he is not a JW.
I wouldn't think so. Most of them, remember Cyril Alessino? He died 4 weeks ago at 93 years old. His office was right next to Dean's.
Is that right? Cyril died.
93 years old. Yes, and Dean was his overseer, actually.
What happened to, if you'll indulge me on just two more, what happened to the Curzon brothers, John and Russ Curzon?
Oh, yes. Well, John Curzon died a long time ago, a very bitter man. He was the inventor of a lot of the machinery over in the factory that accommodated the type of printing that they did. And my husband knew him pretty well, and he stayed low profile in the background. I didn't even know. I met him before I went to Bethel. When we were visiting Bethel, my husband introduced me to him. He was very bitter, even at that time. Russell Curzon, everybody knew, a very friendly, very nice man, knew all the secrets of Bethel, and died quite a while ago.
Did they both die as JWs?
Yeah, I think John was probably not very active or involved in the steward, being a steward of the flock. But Russell stuck close to Bethel. He gave when we were there, he was a man who had a million experiences and was always talking to the younger people about the experiences he saw, but he didn't have any power. I always wondered why he didn't have power. And so who knows what went on in the years past with Nor. Can't say, but my husband
I appreciate learning that. And finally, if I can ask, at Bethel there was three very famous brothers at Bethel.
The Adams brothers.
They were the Adams brothers.
Adams brothers.
You had Joel, and what was the name of the third one? I forgot.
Carl. Carl was my overseer. Carl Adams, Joel, and Don Adams was president of the Watchtower, Pennsylvania.
What happened to those three? Then I'll let you go.
They're deceased.
Did they all die as JWs?
Oh yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. There,
Wow.
I could write a book about, and I don't really know a lot about them, but they were interesting people. They had a mind of their own. I had interaction with all three of them. Very pleasing action. Although I think Carl was a little weird, and but that's because
That's
of
true.
many reasons. They were just people with the same old stuff that all everybody goes through with brothers and people, and it's just the same old world with whether you're in that watchtower or you're out of watchtower, and there's always intrigue. And Carl Adams got jilted and then married on the rebound, and I could talk about that for a while. But this is all people junk, isn't it? And but they were faithful to this organization because it was all they had. They built a life around it, and they loved it because they had control. They had power. And that's what people
Thank you, Barbara.
want. What? Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, thank you, Larry, for calling in. Listen, we have got Barbara Anderson. We've got Deanna Moore on with us. You heard Deanna's story. Would love to have you talk to her. What are some of the questions you have? You heard of all the abuse that she's suffered from by being in the Watchtower organization. So why don't you speak up? Say hello to Deanna. I have to tell you, I mean, I've been having this program for a long time, but I've never, I've only had a few instances like, as bad as I've heard from Deanna with how she was treated in the Watchtower. So go ahead, 615, you're on with us.
Hi, this is Eric. How you doing, Barbara and Deanna?
Hello.
Doing good.
Good. I wanted to say to Deanna that I'm so sorry what you went through, and to back up what you went through, I'm so glad that you had a good childhood with your parents, despite being strict. That's not a bad thing necessarily. It is to the cult, but there's physical violence and mental abuse on both sides of my wife's family and I, on both sides. So it's on both sides of her family and on both sides of mine. And it has not caused, have been an easy marriage, and it is not it's just, there's so much abuse in this organization that I feel like you really truly believed that it was the truth. Like my wife and I did too. We didn't think it was perfect. We never agreed with the disfellowshipping arrangement, but, or followed it, but it's not the truth. And when you find that out, it's really hard. It's really hard to accept, and it takes a long time to accept. I understand that it took you 2 years, but my point being is that it's abuse that is waking us up. That's what woke my wife and I up. You can only take abuse to where you're like, am I such a disgusting person? Like, why? What am I doing wrong? But then you figure out it's everyone else. It's not me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was up in a cult. And I really appreciate you telling your story, and I'm really sorry for all your pain and heartache. But to quote William Shatner, who did the captain, whatever he was in Star Trek, I'm not that big of a fan, but he says, "I need my pain. I don't want them to take away my pain. It's what makes me." And it does shape us sometimes to be wonderful people when we can throw out all that negative emotions that we had and brainwashing, and like you said, focus on a new lifestyle, a healthy one. But thank you so much for telling your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, if my trauma can help somebody else wake up or realize that there's hope, you don't have to, it doesn't have to define who you are.
That's right.
Use it as a stepping stone to make a better life. It does make you maybe a little bit more empathetic for other people and other terrible things that other people go through. Jehovah's Witnesses are not the only ones that go through trauma. There's abuse everywhere, not just in religion. It's a worldwide problem, and our job is to support each other. We're still brothers and sisters, even though we don't have a religion that joins us.
Well, the average person does not understand those in cults.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so we all carry the same baggage. That's how I say my chief statement. We all carry the same baggage, so that binds us together to a certain extent. But we could overdo it. But
Right.
I wanted to not take away from this, but I wanted to just say to Deanna that Stephen Lett taught that class with the Pioneer School that you went to when you were 11 or 12.
Mhm.
Anyway, he died in 2014. Angelo Catanzaro.
Zara did.
Yes, he did. And he was a fair man, and people spoke highly of him. We did. Kind of brusque, but kind of tough. And some people believe tough love is the good thing.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
again,
Qualities.
it doesn't work on everybody. There's different folks
right.
with different folks. So, but the Watchtower has one big mistake that they make over and over again. They come out with a rule and stick to it, no matter what the results are, until it becomes the chickens come home to roost, and then they get attacked. I mean, the victims are the what they used to call members, and that's okay. You know, they put up with it. What happens to the victims? Just get rid of them, or tell them to grow up, or something.
Discredit them. Call them an apostate.
Yes, but now things are changing, and now.
Well, you build up enough of a problem that it's impossible to hide anymore.
That's right.
You know, it's an infection that just keeps growing and growing and growing until you cannot deny it anymore. It becomes like this elephant in the room that's no longer a baby elephant. Now it's a big elephant that no one can ignore.
Well, different comments are being made. I've been looking at some of them. A very
Hey, Bob, what I want to do first, if we could, we do have Sharon on the line. We have her on the film with you on the video.
Yeah.
So let's bring Sharon in. She's been waiting for a while. So let's bring Sharon in. Sharon, you on there with us? Sharon, you on there with us? Hello, Sharon?
No,
What? Yes, go ahead.
no,
Go ahead, Sharon.
I'm just listening.
Oh, I thought you wanted to, well, you hit the link, so that link would
Oh.
bring you right onto the video. But did you have a question or anything you want to say about the program?
No, I missed the first part, so I don't know what the
All right.
what her problem was.
All right. Well, I'm sorry that we just brought you on here by you did hit the link, so I thought you wanted to come on, but that's okay. We'll take you up now.
so she can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, you can watch YouTube. Yeah. Well, anyways, let's. If anyone like to call in and say hello to Barbara, say hello to Deanna, that would be wonderful. Deanna told a story on here, a very heart-wrenching story. So why don't you see if you can call in? And you're on our telephone line or our radio network. You got the telephone number. I'm going to put the telephone number up once again, and let's see if we can't get some other people to call in. My goodness gracious, let me take a look here, Barbara. We do have a lot of people.
Hey,
Listen,
I want to interrupt here.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to plan on talking about a subject, and it's extremely interesting. We touched on it about a person, Danny Black, and his grandmother, Suzette. Well, that was her name. And of course, we have a gal right here that knew these people and knew the idiosyncrasies of these people. And I know Danny Black told me things about the family that were not known. And one of these days, I will do this myself. I won't interview anybody, but I'll talk about this family because it is extraordinary. And they were wrapped up with the Rutherford. And Danny Black's family background on Suzette's side goes to the Coca-Cola Company. Coca-Cola was discovered, the taste, or it was a chemist who is was, I believe he didn't become a Bible student, but I believe his wife did. And Suzette, which is Danny's grandmother, plays a part in all of this. In the Rutherford days, it is extraordinary information, and it shows that these were just very, very low people mentally, not Suzette. And I'm not talking about Black, the president of I don't know him, but when Suzette was dying, Danny told me a lot about the Koch family, and I happen to know someone right now who was a CEO for Koch, and who was a witness. And so this goes back a long time ago, during World War I, and even before that, a few years. But anyway, Deanna knew Suzette, not well, but she knew her, and she was quite a fine woman. And when she was dying, the family was standing around the bed, and they expected that her to die anytime. And what she must have endured with Rutherford around, it we'll never know, except for what she said just before she died. And every so often, she would become conscious a little bit, and she would sing a Christmas carol. And the family was absolutely
mortified.
And the doctor explained that this is because she was, as a child, she was, and it was coming back to her in her brain. All brain stuff, like Deanna explains. Well, when Suzette sat up just before she died, and I said this once before, talking to folk here, but a long time ago, and there's a new audience. But she said, and everybody in that room heard her say that. And maybe some will remember when I said it. And she said, "Judge, stop it. Get your tongue out of my mouth." Isn't that horrible? She was faithful till she died as a witness, and she knew what Judge Rutherford was all about. They stuck through this thick and thin because they thought that it was the truth. We know better. Years and years later, we know what this was and what it did to people. And those in control were not moral people, necessarily. I studied on Russell. Absolutely a crackpot. Rutherford, a crackpot. Many of the people associated with Russell were crackpots. I have information on majority of the people that ran this organization. It was small, but big for them, a few thousand in 1908, 30, 40,000 worldwide, getting smaller and then getting bigger depending on the events of the time. And I know when they left and the disputes that they had with Russell, it was never like the Watchtower portrayed it. Never. They had arguments over the vow. They were bitter against one another. Some stayed in. Some of the Bible students have, from years ago, did research and put a lot of this together that I have, and read some of the garbage that went on back in those years. Never think that the background of this was better. It wasn't any better than what we hear of today. Just people who wanted power and control and had it over others, who thought that the world would be fair and get better if God's kingdom would come. And so they put up with the stuff that they did. And it is a shame. And we're going to see this. Deanna, you got
They whitewashed the graves.
Yes. What a conclusion. Perfect. Okay, Rick.
Well, very good, Deanna. Very good program. Thank you, too, for filling in for Efren tonight. Now, I want to see you more often here on the Sixth Screens. I think I'm going to give you. I think I'm going to give you a program of your own. You do it. You do.
I volunteer.
You really do. You really. I know you're connected with a lot of people, Deanna. A lot of people. I couldn't believe it. I wish I could have got more calling in. They were listening, But sometimes people just don't know what to say. They're in
Yeah.
they're in shock, seriously. But
Yeah.
I've
I
heard.
know we should give a disclaimer and tell them to make popcorn before we get started so that they
Yeah.
can
Well,
enjoy the show.
Well, it was a popcorn moment. I'll tell you that.
Well, the Spanish are leaving the organization in droves, so Spanish is really needed, and Ephraim can't take care of all that by himself.
Yeah, well, I've from the interviews that I've done before, I've had a ton of people from here in Ecuador, from Mexico, from Puerto Rico, Spanish speaking people in the States begging me to translate some of the work that I've done into Spanish. So, alrighty, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
So,
And I get emails from people all over the world about what they know about the organization, and they're coming forward. I got one yesterday, was extraordinary, which I read to Deanna, which I will not read to anybody else other than take action on what we can possibly do to help the woman who wrote about the accusations of so much not sexual abuse, familial effect, that type of thing, but actual people who have come together to satanically abuse children under the name of Jehovah's Witnesses. This is evil people using Jehovah's Witnesses, and have for years, and it was always a secret. And the service department knew. They knew over and over again, and yet they went out to the Howells. Those people, Ted Jarris, out to the Howells, and how, as you said, now you have a constitutional right to say those things about them because it was experiences you went through.
Yep. I thought about that. My husband said, he goes, do you need to worry about any backlash from that? And I said, no, this is my life.
That's right.
This is my life, and this is what I went through. So.
Yes. So that is what our Constitution allows us to do, is our own experiences, and let it fall where it may, Okay. I think that.
Do we have time for one more person? There's somebody, Bobby, that's in the chat.
All right, let's. Bobby, did you want to come on? Bobby, did you want to call up on the telephone line? Now, Bobby, I know you were on earlier. And I couldn't bring you on because we only have question answer at the end of the program. But if you want to come in, Bobby, dial the telephone number you see it on the screen right now, and that'll get you in, Bobby, if you want to say something. So yeah, he was in earlier. He came in on our live streaming here, but I didn't want to bring him in and interrupt the program. Is that you, Bobby? 707. Go ahead. We have 707. You're on with us.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you so much for this interview. It was amazing. I saw Deanna on another interview quite some time ago, but I was just as impressed. Now, I have, over the past years, been looking into different healing modalities, and have come across the neuro-linguistic programming. I don't know if I came in later and I didn't hear the explanation. Can you just again recap what, please, Deanna, what is the basis for the neuro-linguistic programming, how it works?
Yeah, neuro-linguistic programming is a tool that came from the field of psychology. It was developed in the 70s by a psychologist and a computer programmer, and one of them was also a major in linguistics. And so what they did was they decided that the brain is much like a computer, and you can model what one brain does with what another brain does. So if this brain does something really well, you can teach another brain to do it by following the patterns. So neuro-linguistic programming is a lot about understanding how the brain works, how the brain changes beliefs, how the brain holds emotion, how the brain codes emotion, how the brain codes time, both the future and the past. And all of those mental programs are what create our reality. We'd like to believe that we are 100% in control of everything we think, and that's just not true. We have the conscious part of our mind, but most of our programming is on the unconscious part of our mind. A lot of that programming comes in from childhood and from people of authority. So the first people that start programming a child are usually their caretakers, their parents. As they get older, it's teachers that start having an influence on that programming. And then as we get older, religious leaders, politicians, other people of authority fall into that category of people that can program the brain. And sometimes the programming that we have is not very useful. They use the computer analogy. So nobody needs to have an owner's manual to know how to use a computer. You just get on Facebook or Google and you just use it.
You follow the instructions.
Yeah, well, we don't come with an owner's manual.
That's right. Absolutely.
So we have the most amazing computer in our skull, and we don't come with an owner's manual.
Yeah.
So, that's why we have conflicts. That's why we say, oh, I'm going to go to the gym, and then we don't. That's why we say, oh, I'm going to stop eating sugar, and then we do. We have these conflicts of programs that are going on in our brain. And neurolinguistic programming is about deconflicting all of those programs that are in our brain. At the emotional level, at the unconscious level, it rebalances the right-left brain connection. So if you do research on NLP, you'll come up with, experts who have discredited it. And in my opinion, the reason why it's been discredited is because it is highly effective. It is fantastically effective. This is not talk therapy where you have to talk about stuff for years and years and years and never really get anywhere. This fixes what you've got going on in your brain. We can release trauma in a matter of just a few sessions. I mean, alcohol dependence, all of these massive traumas can be healed very easily by using the exact same methods that the brain accidentally uses and will use with time. But this is a way of accelerating what the brain is doing anyway. So when I started doing this in 2005, I worked a lot with health issues, because a lot of our emotions also can show up in our body. I mean, stress is well known to cause physical symptoms. If you've got to talk on the stage and you get nervous, you a lot of times will feel it in your stomach. So that's, not anything extreme. But I was using this to help people with even health issues, and with fantastic results. And the elders accused it of being demonic. And at the time, I defended it. I was like, no, you don't understand. This is how Jehovah's going to bring us to perfection. This is how the brain works. This isn't the pseudoscience. This works. I've been using it for now 20 years with fantastic results. I believe that this saved my life. I went through so much trauma, so much pain. I've had many people say, I don't know, if that happened to me, I probably would have committed suicide. You know why I didn't? Is because I restructured my brain. I restructured those emotions to work in my benefit instead of against me. I'm convinced that it's the most effective tool, the fastest and effective tool that I know. Sorry, that was talking a lot.
No, it's
you very much.
interesting.
I appreciate that.
It's interesting.
And I just wanted to say that I'm very sorry about, your experiences within that society. It was very traumatic for so many people. And, some of us are still alive. It's not an easy life after you leave without family support. I wonder if you could just touch quickly on the necessity of family support and kind of the symptoms that we can expect to see when we so we don't lose feel hopeless when we actually have to make a decision to leave, even though we have reprisal from the family.
I've done several videos about some of those subjects already on YouTube, because That's a very emotional subject. And so, because we have a right brain and a left brain, we have the logical side of our brain that says, oh, you know what? This is the right decision. I'm going to do it. And sometimes we get stuck because the emotional fear, we're emotional hostages still of the religion. So we might be out of the religion literally, but we are emotional hostages still. And that's stuff that is absolutely 100% healable. The brain does those things naturally with time. But in my opinion, this is a hack. This is a brain hack, because you know what? I've already wasted 38 years. I don't want to waste another 38 years letting my brain get over it in its own time. I need a brain hack to speed it up here. I got time to make up for.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That was important. That was a good question, and hope that others will appreciate the answers. Can you recommend? There are people in the U.S. who are familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses now, and they're therapists, and they know this kind of thing. So we can recommend that. The Watchers, if you're still a witness and you have these problems, it's legal to go to a therapist, a mental health therapist.
We got time for one more caller. One more caller. Go ahead, 603. Come on in.
Hi. This is Tom.
Let's go with six. Well, we got 603 calling in. Let's go with the woman first. Let's go with 603-313. Go ahead, sister.
No, I'm Bobby. Bobby.
Oh, Bobby, you're from New. Okay, Bob. We got Bobby. Well, Bobby, you've been. Yeah,
I come on a lot.
Yeah, well, Sal, I'm sorry, we couldn't get you on earlier. It wasn't time. But what do you want to say?
Well, I had to go to the bathroom.
All right.
So I wanted to tell you, you're a strong lady. I'm telling you. I don't know how you made it through your life.
Yeah.
But Flood's husband is very nice. He seems like a good guy. But whatever happened to your second husband?
Well, he went on and got remarried, and then 9 years later kidnapped my children, and now has my children.
Oh, right. That's the second. Oh, okay. I get that. I'm sorry. He's three of them are morons.
I need a flow chart for all the husbands.
No, but I think you're a very strong lady.
You do
Thank
too.
you. Thank you.
Imagine what you would have done had you not had these experiences, and if you were never.
No, I can't believe you're so strong. I can't believe it. I was crying almost when I heard your story. I'm telling you.
Well, I've talked about the NLP, and I'm completely convinced that that's what saved my life, because it's a brain hack, and the trauma was intense. And I knew the only way I was going to survive is if I did to myself what I did to those Mormons all those years ago, is that there's very specific things that the brain needs to survive and to move on. And being stuck in the trauma doesn't help. That doesn't help. You've got to move forward.
When I was married with my ex-wife, she was a Mormon at the time, right? So I became a Mormon and fell out to Jehovah's Witnesses. Oh my God! You had to. They wanted me and her to get married in the altar, and we're closed. And we closed over here. What?
Hey, Bobby, we're having a hard time talking with you. You're having a hard time.
Look at that! Did you see that, everybody? What was that monster? Oh my goodness!
This is what barks in the background.
Bobby, thanks for calling in, Bobby. We don't have too much time left, but thank you for calling in and talking to Deanna and talking to Barbara. Thank you very much, Bobby.
Yes, thank you, Bobby.
We got time for one more. We got 603 New Hampshire. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rick, Diana, and Bob. Very, very interesting to me. It sounds amazing. I've never been exposed to that type of therapy. I have done therapy, and I thought that I was pretty good, but I know definitely I do have a drinking problem, and to me it doesn't seem like it's a problem, but to other people they think it might be a problem. So and you said that this neuro linguistic NLP could help with something like that. I mean, maybe there is something that I haven't been able to recognize, and I was very interested in finding out what I can do to actually, get myself exposed to some of this, because it sounds very interesting.
Everything that a human does, even if it appears bad, has what's called in my world positive intent, which means that even when we do something that's destructive, like extreme alcoholism, drugs, whatever it is that we end up doing, there's a reason why the brain is trying to do that. And it's usually because there's a good motive behind it. Maybe it's like, for example, I was working with a lady that had suffered from migraines for a long time, and she was wanting to use NLP to get rid of migraines. So I said, okay, so what's good? What's the positive intent of a migraine? She goes, absolutely nothing. Migraines are horrible. Okay, well, play with me here. Let's pretend that there is something good about a migraine. What could it possibly be? And she was one of those people pleasers that said yes to everything, always. And she goes, well, I guess the only thing good about a migraine is that's the only time that I say no. That's the only time I take for myself and I take care of myself. So I said, okay, so the positive intent, the good thing, the secondary gain from the symptom is, you get to take care of yourself. So using NLP, we were able to work with honoring the positive intent so that she could still take care of herself. And now the brain no longer needs to use a migraine to do that, because she's in harmony with her own unconscious mind. And she now has signals that her mind can send her, so she doesn't have to suffer through the migraines anymore. And so after the session, she didn't have migraines anymore. And you know what? Alcoholism, there's reasons why we choose to do that. We're either hiding emotions, we're hiding trauma, we feel like we're spoiling ourselves, we feel like we deserve it. And that's why it's hard to stop, is because it's doing something for us. Not just the effect of the alcohol, but it's doing something emotional, it's doing something psychological for us too. And so when we address the emotional needs and give the mind other options, better options, then those kind of things are super easy to resolve, actually.
You make it sound super easy, but I would love to see it in practice. I would definitely be willing to try something like that, because it almost sounds too good to be true. Kind of like being hypnotized to quit smoking. I have never bothered to try to do that, but it seems like it works for some people, but it doesn't for other people.
Hypnosis has its times, but the reason why hypnosis doesn't always work is because the brain resists being manipulated when the brain understands that it's being manipulated. So this is very different, because this is not, hypnosis in the sense that you don't know what's happening, that, they could plant whatever in your brain and you don't understand. This is a right-left brain. This is the logic brain, and this is the emotion, creativity side of the brain. This is a whole brain exercise. I tell people that a lot of times it's like brain gym. You're going to be thinking and releasing emotions and using your brain in ways that you're not used to using. So it's brain gym. It's brain restructuring is what it is.
Well, Tom, you hang on, Tom, because Tom, she'll give you all the information at the end of the program, so you can write to her and you can and get in contact with her. We've got one more caller, then we got to go to the news. Yeah, we got to go to the news. Okay, thank you, Tom. We're going to go. Did 707 have something else to say? Go ahead, 707.
Hi, my name is Janine, and I want to congratulate you. You have gone through so much.
Thank you.
And you look so good. And Barbara, I love you.
Thank you.
I remember when you used to be on the conference calls,
Yeah.
you know, on the conference
Yes, years ago. Yeah.
platforms.
Mhm.
That's what helped me wake up.
Good.
When I started listening to everybody, you know, their stories and, you know, because when I got this fellowship, I really thought it was still the truth, even though I was smoking. So I thought, well, I'm doing something bad and I deserve it. But I thought it was still the truth. And when I saw those and those stories came out, I realized, oh my God, I was in a cult.
Yeah.
And so, wow.
Well, Janine, you must have listened in years ago.
Well, I did when they were doing the platforms, not in when they were doing when some of them were in LA, you know, and I saw Barbara up there, you know, introducing people coming out.
Well, good for you. So that really,
Almost like what you guys are going to have in Boston,
I'm sorry?
you know, with the
Convention.
convention, but it was different.
Yeah,
It
in
was,
fact, we're having, just let me make a comment on that. We have a convention coming up. It's called Still Alive in 2025. It's an it's an ex Jehovah's Witness convention up here in Boston. It's going to be August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd on 2025, not 2024. But we already have over 200 people are going to be here. It's unreal.
yeah, I asked you for tickets, so
Yeah,
hopefully I'll get
the
them.
tickets, you'll get it. Yeah, no, what happened is I was waiting for the dates, so you'll have those tickets, Janine, within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're out, and I'm glad that you're okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, there you have it. There you have it. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is give the information that people have been wanting here. We need to get your email, Deanna. Deanne, and yeah, go ahead. Give your email. How can they get a hold of you?
Do I type it in the chat box?
Yeah, type it in the chat box, but say, because we're on a number of platforms. It's just not
Okay.
YouTube. We're on a number of platforms, radio, and people listening in on the telephone line. So go ahead and give it, and then also type it in there.
Okay. And then since I live in Ecuador, I do a lot of calls and stuff like that on Facebook Messenger. So that's my Facebook page too.
Excellent. Excellent. So how about an email? Why don't you spit out an email? How can they get a hold of you if they want to write you by email?
It's Dina Elise 2014 at gmail.com.
All right. Now, if anyone wants your email and you didn't get that, write me at jwworldnews@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to give you all the information you need on Deanna. Well, thank you, Deanna. Thank you, Barbara. I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed the program tonight. I really, really did. I thought it was fascinating. And, you know, for people listening in, they've got to leave this cult. I mean, they heard your story, Deanna, and really it's brutal. And, you know, they're listening in, a lot of PMOs, a lot of people that are distancing themselves from the Watchtower. But to hear your story, that would move them out. So thank you very much for coming on, and thank you, Barbara.
I hope so, because you know what? Life on the outside is beautiful. It's beautiful and it's free. And you know, all of the things that we're afraid of losing, we don't really have anyway. You're afraid of losing friends. You're afraid of using the community. And you know what? That's all fake anyway. They're not true friendships. And I don't know, I could talk an hour about that. So, you know, just listen to your heart. Your heart is not treacherous. Your heart is intuition. You know. So follow what you know.
I agree. I'd like to say something. This program is just one of many to come that are going to be addressing issues that you all want to know about that have been quite confidential. There are people now who are willing, after years of not speaking up, who had control in this organization, dealt directly with those in the service department and where the secrets lie, who are going to come forth with the secrets. It's time. It's just time. It's been too long that Watchtower has been able to keep these secrets about how they handle these situations around the world. Now, the people who are the victims and the elders who have left the organization over this stuff, they have had it, and they've kept the secrets for years. They are willing to come forward, and it will make us all better people, to happier people, to know we were right, that we were right.
Well, Barbara, it sounds like you do have someone coming on in the future that's willing to spill the beans or willing to tell us some secrets.
A number of people.
So they'll be coming right here on the 6th screen. So we appreciate that, Barbara. And I just wanted to say, too, to Deanna, when we do have that convention, we're going to have some extreme cases of people really being hurt. I mean, really, their lives pulled right out from under them. Come on, and through the internet, and have in our little venue where we can hear some of these extreme stories. So, if you don't mind, I'll be contacting you, and I'd like to put you on the list. So you come, because we'll have some big screen TVs in the arena. So that I want to bring you on from Ecuador, because I know people would really say, "You have got to be kidding me." Hey, I'm glad you are a survivor. Deanna, don't you ever change. Don't you ever give in, up or out. Keep waving that flag of victory. Thank you, Deanna.
Thank you for having me. You guys are wonderful. I'm so glad that we're brothers and sisters.
Well, that's right. We have a lot of freedom now. Barbara,
always family.
Well, it's like a big family. Thank you, Barbara. Now see you again in 2 weeks.
Yep.
You do your homework, Barbara. I tell you, we have 15 different programs on our network, but I have to tell you, I give you an A+. You do really good. Thank you.
Oh, my heart just beats and beats with joy. Thank you.
All right. We're going to end this program here. Thank you.
All right. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. My goodness gracious. That's Barbara Anderson, Deanna Moore. I tell you what, that is something else. That program, very few programs I can listen so intently to. But I couldn't leave listening to Deanna. That poor girl, she really was beat up big time by this evil cult. Well, don't you guys leave us. We have 2 more programs coming up tonight here on the 6 screens. We've got JW World News. Now, that's the news the Watchtower doesn't want us talking about, but we talk about it every Saturday night and every other Sunday right here on the 6 Screens Tele-Network. And then Awakening After the Watchtower. A good friend, Eric, he's a former Jehovah's Witness down in Tennessee, and he'll be coming on somewhere around 10 o'clock tonight. So, Eric, hang in there with us, buddy. Well, thank you, folks, for listening in. Don't go anywhere. Stay on these channels, the Facebook channels, our radio and telephone network. Stay on YouTube. We'll be back in about a minute. Thank you very much for listening in. We really, really appreciate it.